everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you, although it's in video. I wanted to thank the Korean Insurance Research Institute for this kind invitation. Today, I will be talking about how the insurance industry can expedite scaled deployment of climate technologies to enable the energy transition and industrial decarbonization. First, I will tell you a few words about the Geneva Association, my think tank, and then I will spend most of the time on opportunities for leveraging property and casualty insurers' expertise in the area of energy transition and industrial decarbonization. I will also make comments about what steps we are taking based on our research, and I will also at the end share with you some resources from the Geneva Association that might be of interest to you. Just a few words about Geneva Association. It is the strategic think tank of the insurance industry. It was launched in 1973. The members are CEOs of largest insurance and reinsurance companies globally. Currently, we have 86 members. Together, these companies manage over 22 trillion of US dollars of assets under management. When you think about our research, our mandate is to perform highly strategic, forward-looking research on topics that are highly relevant to the insurance industry or insurance industry could make a significant impact on. The basis of our research is based on significant industry collaboration and enabling cross-sectoral partnerships. Now, when we think about decarbonizing our economy, a critical issue is the energy transition. And clearly, over the last 4 decades, technologies such as solar and wind have become cost competitive with their fossil fuel counterparts. It's taken 4 decades to bring solar to market at scale. However, currently, we realize that scaling solar projects are not realizing their market potential for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons is that insurability of solar projects based on, particularly with consideration of extreme weather events, is one of the factors that have been holding back financing of these projects. So we need to think about development of these technologies, but also be quite mindful of their insurabilities, not just from a market and technology perspective, but also from a physical climate risk and specifically extreme weather perspective. Now, as we think about decarbonizing the economy, decarbonization of essential industrial sectors such as steel, concrete and cement, aluminum, chemicals, aviation, trucking, and shipping, which account for over 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, is quite challenging. Now, what we did at the Geneva Association, in collaboration with 15 leading insurance and reinsurance companies globally, and partnerships with US Department of Energy, Breakthrough Energy, which is the largest private platform for investing in climate tech, chaired by Bill Gates, and a whole range of other partners, we have conducted research to see how we can leverage the expertise of property and casualty insurance and reinsurance companies, particularly their risk engineering expertise, their risk modeling and assessment expertise, and their underwriting expertise to help manage risk of these technologies, to make them more attractive for investors and to make them market ready. This study has already been completed and published in 2024 in 2 reports that you can access. Now, achieving the energy transition will require significant reallocation of capital. In fact, a significant part of this capital needs to go into development, scaling, and adoption of a wide range of technologies such as green hydrogen, carbon removal storage, industrial geothermal, advanced nuclear, sustainable aviation fuels to enable the transition of these critical economic sectors. Now, according to the International Energy Agency, investments of around 4.7 trillion US dollars annually are needed between now and 2050 to enable this transition. Now, let me give you a sense for what do we mean by scale. In fact, if we want to meet the climate targets, there is an urgency with scale deployment of these technologies that many of them remain in pre-commercialization. So, for example, when you think about these sectors, for example, let's consider aviation, we need to develop and scale sustainable aviation fuels, and you can just see the difference between the production today and where we need to be by 2030. When you think about carbon management, by that I mean carbon removal, utilization, and storage, currently we are at 49 megatons per annum. In terms of the storage, we need to hit 700 megatons per annum by 2030. That's only 6 years ahead. So while there is challenge and we know we're not going to meet these targets, I want to stress that there is absolute urgency for us to expedite development and deployment of these technologies. So why is the timing right? There are a number of factors that have aligned sort of to mobilize critical stakeholders around the table for development and scaling of these technologies. The first element is that many countries, geopolitics of energy is shifting because of energy security concern. In other words, a number of nations have launched their national critical material strategies. These are critical materials that are going to be needed for production of a lot of technologies that are going to be needed for the energy transition. US, Canada, Australia, several countries in Europe, Japan are all among those countries that have recently issued their strategy. Second, over the last 3 to 4 years, there have been transformative public policy and legislation that's availing significant amount of government subsidies into development and deployment of these technologies. For example, in the United States, the Inflation Reduction Act and Bipartisan Infrastructure Act has deployed over 300 billion US dollars into development of these technologies, which has been matched with over $490 billion in private investments. Similarly, you see the same patterns in Japan, as well as in Korea, as well as in Europe. Alliances to expedite market development, you're starting to see countries are creating alliances to create markets by working with companies and corporations in those sectors that I mentioned earlier, because they're going to be off-takers of these green energy that is going to be produced through these technologies. Fourth is there are efforts to coordinate financing so that appropriate level of funding can go into all stages of technology development, from innovation in lab to early demonstration and pilots, all the way to commercial deployment. An excellent example of that is Breakthrough Energy, a platform that is chaired by Bill Gates and includes philanthropy, the highest net worth individuals, and increasingly more corporations and governments that are bringing their funding into these funds for more coordinated and scaled deployment of funding into development of these technologies. Fifth one is the emergence of sustainable finance, development of taxonomy for what constitute green investing, and related regulations that are enabling reporting for better informed investments. Sixth one is massive development with respect to innovation and tech hubs. You see that around the world, you're seeing consortia on hydrogen, on carbon removal storage, where producers and consumers are coming together to use the infrastructure to expedite development and utilization of these technologies. And last but not least, there are efforts into transforming the way we think as a society in commercializing technology. US Department of Energy 3 years ago issued adoption readiness framework, which brings focus to all the risks that are holding back and delaying new technologies from development and market readiness. This is a very important development for us as an insurance industry. Let me elaborate a bit about that. So this is the sort of the framework that nicely describes 17 risk types under 4 different risk categories. So as you develop new technologies and the technology is going through commercializations, one of the main concerns traditionally has been the value proposition of that technology, whether it can be delivered at lower cost compared to what we have today, what is the functional performance and reliability of that technology, the ease of use and complexity of use of that technology. That's the traditional approach, which is fundamental. However, what we've seen is that market readiness for scale deployment of any new technology, it's hurdled by a number of other risks. For example, demand maturity and availability of market size, downstream value chain of that technology, has that been developed? Resource maturity, do we have manufacturing and supply chain for producing the technology in projects? Do we have materials and material sourcings for development of technologies? Have we trained our workforce to be able to work in potentially new projects? Do we have the infrastructure in place? Do we understand the relationships in these new projects across the stakeholders? And then the last part, which is also quite fundamental, is do we have the license to operate? What is the regulatory environment? What is public policy for environmental protection related to environmental risk of implementing the technologies? What is the perception of the community? Do they want these sites to be built in their backyard? And what is the permitting and siting? So you see, there is a range of complex risk-related issues that in the current technology commercialization process are not being tackled. To address these, we need to have a variety of other stakeholders that need to be engaged, manufacturers, infrastructure operators, various levels of the government, investors, and so on. Now, one thing that we added to this framework was insurability and availability of affordable insurance. If these technologies develop, but we haven't developed the innovative insurance solutions for scaling and bringing these technologies to market, that's going to hold back technology development. Now, climate technologies such as green hydrogen and carbon removal storage and the ones that I mentioned, they're complex. They're highly capital intensive. They come with a lot of untested risk and numerous challenges, as I just laid out, with scaling and market readiness. So what does that mean for us as an insurance industry? What would it take for us to assess insurability of these new technologies? Well, one of the things that we brought forward in our reports, which are accessible to you, are 9 critical factors that need to be assessed in order to assess and enhance insurability of new emerging technologies. So assessing insurability conditions for new technologies is time-consuming and very complex. So the sooner we can start that journey working with stakeholders who are developing these technologies, the better. Now, there are, as I said, 9 factors that we need to consider. For example, what is the independent, predictable lost exposures? For example, are there defects in terms of development and operations of these new technologies that we need to catch? Are there defects in the initial equipment that are being designed and developed for implementation of these technologies? We need to catch all of that. The manageable maximum potential loss. We need large number of exposure units to be able to create an insurance pool. And then we need to have information transparency. So obviously, project developers know a lot more than insurers. Can we create situations where we put insurance risk engineers together with project developers much earlier in the process? So these are the things that we need to consider as an industry if we want to be part of the solution, if we want to expedite developing innovative solutions for these emerging technologies faster. We don't have 4 decades to bring these technologies to market. So then let me now take a deeper dive into the technology commercialization process and give you a sense of where insurers come in. So when you think about a new technologies, there are essentially 3 stages for development of a technology from lab to scale deployment in the market. First stage is research and development in the laboratory. We refer to that as technology readiness level 1 to 3. Then there is demonstration and early deployment where, projects, first of a kind projects are implemented in real environments to really start looking at risk and how the project operates and start collecting data about the risk. Those are referred in the sort of a commercialization lingo as technology readiness levels 4 to 7, and ultimately at scale commercial deployment in the market where we are actually ready to deploy the technologies at scale, where we talk about technology readiness level 8 to 9. Now, when you think about resources, there are different investors that come into this picture as the technology moves the commercialization. For example, in the early stages, investors are generally philanthropy, government grants, and early stage venture capitals. When you think about the later stages of development, when technology is ready to deploy, the investors are usually the industries, corporations, institutional investors, and banks that are offering debt and capital market financing. Now, there is this in between where we are demonstrating the project where everything falls apart. These, first pilots are pretty expensive. They're of order of tens of millions. But then when the technology is untested, investors are not comfortable to put their money into those first of a kind projects. So there is a significant financing gap for these pilots and early deployment. And as a result, there is a risk of these technologies never make it to the market. So let me tell you what's happening. So through all those initiatives that I mentioned to you earlier, significant amount of government subsidies and are being directed into this space. In addition, project finance, which typically has been used for infrastructure development and big projects, are starting to making their way into pre-commercialization stages. And now we are thinking of new ways of financing these projects, which will include the insurers. And let me explain that. So traditionally, when you're thinking about technology commercializations, insurers would get involved when the technology has already been demonstrated, the risks are understood, they have data, and they can start pricing the risk and offering solutions. As I mentioned, that will take time. And given that the world has an urgency to develop and deploy these technologies, if we were to meet the climate targets, we need to expedite our process of assessing insurability, identifying what products we need to develop, and move towards those directions. So in this new thinking, the idea is to engage insurers' risk engineering teams early with project developers and their investors and their engineering firms much earlier in the process. This is not about underwriting, but it's about framing and assessing the risks and trying to come with risk management solutions to try to lower the risk. This would lead to enhanced return on investment and will attract more capital. Okay, that sounds really great theoretically, but how are we going to do this? Now, we have come up with 4 ways to make sure that this engagement happen and show the benefits of it. So the first thing is we are working to identify mechanisms to get insurers and reinsurers, commercial risk engineers into the projects, the first of a kind projects, as soon as possible. This is happening through collaboration with platforms that are financing those first of a kind projects. They have access to those projects and they have incentives for enhanced risk management. Now, by engaging insurers early and working with climate tech developers, their investors and others, we've identified 8 benefits, but in a nutshell, they translate into better data and transparency much earlier in the process, building relationship with critical stakeholders in these complex technologies and projects, the ability to diversify by getting engaged early with those that have access to pipeline of these projects. Insurers may be able to develop the insurance pool much earlier because of those relationships, and they will have the opportunity to scope out what kind of insurance products they already have that can serve these projects and what is it that going to be needed to develop, to innovate. And finally, and very importantly, insurers play a critical role in supporting the development of best practices for managing risk of these technologies. This can lead to expediting development of standards with other stakeholders for project replication. So this is the first thing, get engaged earlier. Second one is to rethink project finance. Currently, what happens in project finance, the project owner decides about the site that they want to develop the project. That decision is usually driven by price of land and a whole range of economic factors, as well as things related to supply chain and infrastructure. They will work with an engineering, procurement, and construction firm to develop the engineering design. And just before going to the financing stage, they will come to and this is around phase 4, they will seek insurance because investors are going to be asking for what insurance have you secured. Well, that is too late because significant amount of risk from insurance lands may have been overseen. And as a result, even solar projects are not securing enough insurance capacity because the design of the project has not anticipated and considered extreme weather risk. That's for commercial, but let alone technologies that haven't been commercial. So our proposal, working with field of project finance and investors, is that insurers, risk engineers not only could bring a lot of benefits by engaging from early pilots, but in any stages of technology development, they should be involved from pre-site selection with the developer. And the reason for that is by assessing the risks, and I will go through the categories of risk later, they can work with the project developer and the engineering firm in implementing risk mitigation measures into the engineering design to enhance the insurability conditions for that project. And we will be releasing more about, for example, just taking solar, which is commercialized, by engaging insurers, risk engineers, and assessing the trends of weather risk in that location over the duration of the lifespan of this project. The project can incorporate risk engineering and risk management solution through use of equipment, the way the project is designed to anticipate risk of weather extreme and thus enhance the insurability of the project. So that's the second thing. The third thing is building on the risk that I showed you in the adoption readiness level, those 17 categories. We took those risks and translated it into risk from insurance lens, because ultimately project developers and investors need to be able to have conversations with insurers around the risks as insurers think about those risks. So we actually have developed what we call an insurability readiness framework for climate tech developers, for the investors, for engineering companies, and insurers, so that they can have a common taxonomy, a common language around risk and issues that they need to consider for management of that risk. In addition, this insurability readiness framework, which I will expand a bit more on, helps expediting assessing insurability of the risk with a much more comprehensive approach. And also, as I will demonstrate, by applying it, we have already started identifying risks in green hydrogen projects and carbon removal storage from insurance lens that's going to hold back scaling up if we do not come up with risk management solutions. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about insurability readiness framework. So what we did is we took those 17 risks in adoption readiness level framework and we translated it into 7 risk categories in the way that insurers considered risk: technology risk, project information and organization risk, legal, financial, and compliance risk, location-specific weather extreme risk, business interruption and supply chain risk, long-term risk, and then ESG risk, environmental, social, and governance. Now, for each risk category, we came up with critical issues that a project developer needs to bring explanations to the insurance company, and we mapped it on project finance. In other words, what information you can collect at what stage of your project development to be able to have the information you need to be able to work with your insurers, to be able to have a sound conversation with your insurers. So imagine that I'm just giving you an example of technology risk. For every one of those 17 risk categories, we have a list of critical issues that the climate tech developer, their investors, and other stakeholders, if government is part of that solution, need to be thinking from an insurance lens and talking to insurers. And as I mentioned, we actually took projects from complex green hydrogen projects and carbon capture and utilization projects, and we identified, and here I have shown in red, I don't have time to go through it, the elements of these complex projects that particularly from insurance lens are going to be very difficult. And that is why we need to have these conversations with these developers as soon as possible. One thing I will highlight with carbon capture and storage, the biggest hurdle for expanding these technologies is long-term durability of carbon staying under the ground in storage systems. Insurance companies are not going to be insuring a 30-year guarantee for these. So this has led to an extensive discussion between our industry through Geneva Association, ministries of energies, and particularly largest oil and gas companies who are operators of these technologies as to what is going to take to scale up these technologies. So it's really important. Now, the last thing, the fourth element of where insurers can bring value is bringing value by expediting development of best practices and for risk management and development of codes of practice for project replication. So it was the efforts of insurance industry to work with other stakeholders from certification and standard setting bodies to develop state-of-the-art risk management practices for construction of offshore wind farms. And now, as we think about the range of these technologies that are coming our way, we need to come up with these kind of standards sooner than later if we want to replicate and scale up projects for the range of technologies. So insurance industry plays a critical role. So what are our challenges looking ahead as an industry? First, identification of most promising technology. How do I know which technologies are most likely to make it to the market? Second one, the insurance markets today are not designed for engagement in pre-commercialization stages. They're designed for making markets for when the technology is commercialized. So that relationship of insurer, reinsurer, and the broker does not apply to technology commercialization pathways. So we need to think about new efficient ways of putting insurers into these engagements from much earlier stages. And particularly the risk engineers, because they're the ones that are going to be critical in helping frame, assess the risk, and work with climate tech developers and their stakeholders to actually find best risk mitigation measures. Cost of service of risk engineers is an issue. It's one of the most expensive costs. So one of the things that we are talking with governments is, can this cost be subsidized? Because this is not about profitability and creating an insurance market. This is about bringing a critical risk management service to pre-commercialization stages to help expedite the financing. Coordination of knowledge among insurers with other stakeholders is foundational for expediting the whole understanding of new risks, risk management, and efficacy of these risk management methodologies, and ultimately development of standards. So when you're working in pre-commercialization stages, it's a very different dynamics than when the technology is ready for market and you're there underwriting the technology. And by the way, some of the risk in pre-commercialization stages may be so large that it's not going to be covered by one insurance company. So development of pools or some kind of a risk-sharing mechanism to enable accessibility to finance might be considered. So these are the things that are going to be subject of our investigation next. What we are doing to operationalize our recommendations, currently we are working with US Department of Energy, as well as a platform of 30 ministries of energies and some of the corporations that are working in this space, particularly to work on several technologies, specifically industrial geothermal, green hydrogen, and carbon removal storage. So this is happening by engaging our members into those projects. Next phase of our project will launch in 2025, where we are going to divert our attention to whether the market is ready. We're going to be focusing on the demand side. What are the needs for insurance of steel, cement, aviation, and other industries that are adopting these technologies, and are we ready to deliver those? As well as, what is the interface of insurance with debt financing if we want to bring big money into this space? Ultimately, institutional investors, banks, and others need to bring their money into this. So how to manage those risks? And importantly, dynamic of the insurance markets. Can we create mechanisms that would allow a much more efficient way of engaging insurers, risk engineers into pre-commercialization stages? But let me leave you also with the idea, many of these technologies, ladies and gentlemen, will come with very high environmental risk, from mining of critical materials all the way to processing, manufacturing, operating in terms of projects, and ultimately decommissioning. We need to take a much closer look at what these environmental risks are and provide feedback into development of the future environmental policies with a preventive approach. Otherwise, while we may address the climate change issue, we could create a much bigger environmental issue. With that, I just wanted to point to a number of resources that are available through Geneva Association in the area of climate change and environment. I have offered the link. There are a range of reports that you can tap into and find more, not only about the area that I have highlighted, but also other areas where we are very active in research and development. With that, I want to thank you for your attention and really grateful for the opportunity to be able to share some of our latest findings and development. And I wish you very productive conversations during your meeting. Thank you.